it's Deborah from the attic, and I want to show you something that's been based on this little bag. It's something I've been working on for a few weeks now. If you're new here, you're very welcome. Please subscribe and then go back and review some of the videos, the other creative videos that I have on my channel. And there's lots in the playlist as well about journaling and card making and life in France generally. And life in France is what has inspired what I'm going to show you. This bag I picked up in my local boulangerie. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's got some beautiful advertising on it, some really ornate features, and it looks like such a period piece, and yet I picked it up 4 or 5 weeks ago. So this has been my inspiration to try and produce a collection of papers that replicate this sense of vintage style advertising, and I'm going to show you the papers and flip through them. There are 19 pages altogether. These are going to be available in my Etsy store, and I've called this a French packaging collection. So you can see here how the bag has helped me put together this style of really ornate advertising, and it goes against all of our current understanding of what advertising should be like, because there's a whole mixture of fonts and sizes and bold fonts and faint fonts. There are various images, and it's a much more complex picture than our standard advertising, which is quite bold, quite direct, with simpler shapes, I think. So this seems to harken back to a more old-fashioned age, and I have tried to replicate this using these images, and these can be used for making a journal or for making a folding book. And when I say a folding book, I mean something like this one that I showed you in a previous video, which I will link up in a card up there. And I think it would also make a beautiful standard journal. Certainly I've included enough pages to enable you to do that, so let's have a quick look. So we have these, which are the starting blocks, which contain the theme of the whole of the kit. This is a large folding pocket. This is also a large folding pocket using different images. And then I have 2 small, almost like money pouches, again using the images. And what's great about these, and I'll show you this when we actually make something, is that they have been deliberately scaled up and sized so that the image will appear on the reverse as well as on the front. Isn't it frustrating when you get something like this and you want to use it in your book, but by sticking it down so you can actually access the envelope, you lose the image? So I've deliberately made sure that you can match up the image on the reverse of the pocket. Then we have 2 of these larger money pockets, and these will fold in the same way as the little one that I've just shown you. Then there are a set of 4 of these pages with large cards on them, and these cards will fit into these large money wallets. So you can print these out as many times as you want. You can print them back to back so you don't have white on the reverse of your image if you want. And there's a whole selection of vintage style pictures on these. Then there are 3 index cards, and again these index cards will fit inside the large pockets. Then there are 2 sheets matching the style of the sheets we saw earlier with the images on them. The difference is that this time these have got lines on them so you can do your own journaling, and then there's a sheet without lines, completely blank, so you can do what you like with those. It's also worth pointing out that these have been deliberately sized so you can cut these down and they will fit over the front of these pockets. It makes it as interchangeable as you want, and of course you can use any of the images from the earlier sheets that we looked at. The envelope is sized so that it will take these cards, so you can slot a whole load of these cards in an envelope, and there are 4 bobbin style elements as well. Then there are 5 backing sheets, and these are quite subtle, so I've tried to make sure that there is a little bit of advertising on these pages. This is picked out in white, it's very faint, but each one is ever so slightly different, but they have this lovely warm tinge to them. I was trying to replicate the warmth of this bag without making any of my background papers too dark, and I hope I've succeeded. And in some of these there is very, very faint grey imaging in the background. This is the final background sheet with, I hope you can see some white writing there, very subtly popping through the pattern of the paper. And of course the background sheets can be used either as pages, or they can be used for you to print on the reverse of any of the cards or any of the other elements in the collection, so that you don't have a white background. So now I'm going to show you how these papers have inspired my next make. I've printed and cut out loads of the elements from the kit, so I've given myself several little pockets, several large pockets, and I've folded these down so that they're ready for me to put into a little book. I've also got several of the background sheets ready, and I'll cut these down and I'll use them to cover the panels of my folding book. So I've taken 2 sheets of 12 by 12 paper and I've cut them in half, so I've got 4 pieces that are 12 by 6. I'm not going to get hung up on measurements. I always try and avoid doing that because your own projects might be differently sized. But I hope this gives you a basis for thinking about how you might want to do your own book. I'm going to score each of my 4 sheets into thirds. So because it's 12 inches, I'm going to score it at 8 and at 4. In order for your book to sit flat when eventually it's made up, we need to trim a little off 2 of the ends of these pieces of paper or card, because as you can see it sort of it does that shape, and if I trim a tiny little piece off this edge and a tiny little piece off this edge, eventually it will sit flat. These are little trimmed edges. I hope you can see just how skinny they are, but that's the difference it makes. It means that this will now sit completely flat as compared to this. If you're really clever, you can put your fold lines in different places so you don't need to trim the edges off, but I find it just as easy to do it this way. For this book, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my pages like this. So these are my 4 pieces of 12 by 6, and I'm going to glue or possibly sew, I might sew these, this way, so that these sections are glued or sewed, but I'm going to leave the top on each of these open because that will create tuck spots. So these are now glued, so I've glued where you can see these pockets. I've popped these little pockets in just to show you that this is open at the top, and I think it's easier to show you looking from the top down rather than any other way. Now the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to glue in these end pages. Again, I'm going to leave the tops open because I have quite a lot of panels there, so I might as well give myself another fresh pocket. I decided to glue rather than to sew because I'm going to be gluing panels of the background papers onto these pages, and that would cover up the sewing, which would be a bit of a shame. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my background sheets and I'm going to cut out panels, and I'm going to cover each of these on both sides. Here we are a couple of hours later and my little book is finished. I'll talk you through the way that I've put it together, but this is how it looks when it's complete, and I've got a ribbon just containing it all. And the ribbon slides through metal embellishment. This is something that I found online. It's just a very simple D-hinge. I've just glued it onto the front of my book and then the ends fold through it. And the ribbon is some burlap, and I've sewn some another ribbon that matches quite nicely with my book on the top of it. So this is just using up things that I had in my stash. So the book itself is a concertina book. I've added lots of stitching. I've also added quite a lot of ribbon and burlap so that the whole thing holds together nicely. But it's a concertina book and it just opens out like that. Sometimes it's easier to show you from above. As I said I would, I cut down the background pages and I've glued them onto each panel, and then I've embellished the panels further. So in this one I've used one of the tiny little pockets which folds so you can still see the design from the front, and I've glued that onto the front of another pocket which holds one of my nice cards, and I've glued the project page on the front of this pocket. This is an envelope, and I've glued one of my cards on the front of that, and as you can see it opens out. I've glued on another of the sort of project tags, and then there's another card that fits in the centre there, and I've glued a card over the place where the lip of the envelope is, so it would just fold out like that. On this page I've glued one of my deep pockets, and I've popped a little card in there to remind myself of where all these cards are throughout the booklet. I've added burlap or lace, a combination of the two, in keeping with the theme of the book and the colour theme of the book. I've got one of my little pockets in here again, and this holds the tiny little bobbin style cutouts. I've got another deep pocket, and again I've got one of the cards popped in there, and then I've got another of my pockets here, and I've glued the reverse of it to this page so you can see the design on the front, and you just pop something in there. And then the final page is actually the back page, and it's been stitched. Hope you can see that I've stitched that down there. So if I turn the book over, another deep pocket on the inside, and this time with my cards I've sewn them back to back. So I've glued the cards together rather, and then I've popped some ribbon and some burlap in the top, and I've stitched across there so it holds it together. And also this is one that I can write on. I've got an index on the reverse of that card. On this side I have another of the pockets, and it's got one of the tags inside, and I've also glued a tag onto the front of the pocket just to make it look a little bit different. This time I've taken two of the smaller envelopes and I've glued them both so that one opens this way and one opens this way, and again inside here are some of the little bobbin shaped tags. Another deep pocket here containing another back-to-back tag with ribbon and burlap in the top. On this side I have an envelope. The top of the envelope is glued in place, and I've got a card over the top and another card on the inside. And this envelope looks rather nice with the printing on the reverse of it, so you don't get white inside the envelope. This has actually got some colour inside it, and it closes like that. And I've got another of my sort of project style tags on the top. Then there's another envelope. This time I haven't put one of the cards over the top of this. I've kept the original that was printed onto the tag. You can see the difference when you don't print on the reverse of it compared to the inside of the envelope. And then we're back to the front again. The glue I've used throughout the project is Beacon 3-in-1, which is an excellent glue for sticking down paper without the paper wrinkling or getting over wet and creating bubbles. So it keeps everything down really nice and flat. I'll provide links below the video to the papers that I've used. These are now available in my Etsy shop. And I'll say, as always, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for watching. And until we meet again, stay safe and take care.